All right, Jacksonville Jaguars draft, a really interesting draft. They had one of the most inconsistent drafts, I think, out of a lot of these teams. There's a few picks I really love, a few picks I really hate, which always creates interesting discussion. So, this should be a fun video, unless you're just a Jaguars fan who wants me to say I love every pick. Unfortunately, you're not getting that here, but I do love some of them, including the Brian Thomas Jr. selection, who, for Jacksonville, he's someone that I think could potentially be an outside threat that they've really been missing in that offense. I think that part of what made the Doug Peterson scheme so good when it won a Super Bowl was, yes, it's so much of this over the middle stuff, but then you had the occasional Alshon Jeffrey deep shot down the field if you needed it, right? I think, could Brian Thomas Jr. fill that role? Maybe. We'll see. He certainly is a bit of a raw prospect, but we know, and this will be a trend for Jacksonville, we know they love their athletes. They love guys who can, who can do a lot of things. This is the taking Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson first overall, right? Because they prefer guys who are the freak athletes. And Mason Smith certainly falls into that realm of someone who you can see the sky-high ceiling, even if the production just isn't there. It just isn't. I know Pro Football Focus grades isn't the end-all, be-all, but just to use it as an example, he was the 488th graded interior defensive lineman his last season in college, and that was his best season. So he is you might be looking at that and saying, what happened here? Well, if it makes you feel better, he's actually was graded pretty well when it came to pass rush stuff from the inside, but was just horrible in run defense. So at least there's something he can do, and you hope that can kind of fill out. And again, some people don't care about PFF grades at all. I think it's worth paying attention to at the defensive line position. It's also worth paying attention to. So if you're curious as to what this chart next to me is, the number all the way to the left is when the player was drafted. The next number over is when they were projected to be drafted, and then you have the name and the position. So for Mason Smith, was projected to be in the 90s, drafted at 48. That alone is a bit of a reach. He's also someone who, listen, the physical tools are there. I get why Jacksonville liked him. I get that this is part of Jacksonville's philosophy is, hey, we're going to miss on some of these guys. I think that's part of the, what kind of prospect are we willing to be wrong on? They're going to be wrong on, they're going to sometimes draft a guy like this and it's not going to hit. The goal is that they draft enough of these guys so when they do hit, they're awesome. We'll see if they can develop Mason Smith. Not the pick I would have made personally. Jaron Jones is another guy who, on the big board is a reach. And listen, you look at reaches. The Jaguars had two picks that were not reaches on the consensus big board, Brian Thomas Jr. and Miles Cole. However, there's some I'm going to defend a little bit, and this one is one of them, because while I get why people were lower on Jaron Jones out of Florida State, the thing is, if you look at him as a whole, he's not a perfect player. He isn't. But once he started playing a slot corner role, he did really good there. And so I think that people are maybe judging him as a whole when it's like, if you're drafting him to be an outside corner, okay, that's a massive mistake. But I don't think that's what they're doing. I think they're trying to get him to be, hey, he's going to be a slot corner. He should be a good slot corner. To me, that's easily worth pick 96. So I get why some people are colder on him than I am personally, but I would not be as worried about something like that. And then you have Javon Foster, who is a offensive tackle out of Missouri. And at first glance, you might say, okay, 24 years old. That's concerning. Getting those old prospects is always a little concerning. But he's had several good years of quality production at Missouri, so I wouldn't be that concerned about it. And as someone who does have the a good size and good frame as well. Again, are there better athletes in this class? Sure, which is a bit of why it's a bit surprising that they went after him, because like I said, they usually like going after the better athlete type guys, but he's someone that I like, and I think that could be a good player. And so again, it's a reach on the consensus big board, but Jones and Foster, I'll actually defend those even though they're reaches. The Smith one I'm not as crazy about, and the Jordan Jefferson one I'm not as crazy about. So he's an interior defensive lineman out of LSU, another guy who, if you're into PFF grades, he's not very good at that type of stuff. It does, have very good power. The highlights look great. Trent Baalke tends to draft guys who have very good highlights. That's part of how he views things. So, again, I get why you could like Jefferson. He's just another project. He's someone you're going to have to develop. And for the Jaguars, like, we could sit here and criticize this all we want, but at the same time, they don't need Smith and Jefferson to hit for this to be a good draft. If one of them completely sucks and is out of the league in 2 years and the other hits, then that player is awesome, and you spent that amount of draft capital on a great interior defensive lineman. You won. It's just it's a gamble. Would you rather have a bunch of lower level lottery tickets to have a higher chance of winning, or lottery tickets to have a lower chance of winning that get you more money if they hit? It depends on who you ask. DeAndre Pierce is an interesting selection, as he is someone who was ranked 261st on the big board. He goes 100 spots earlier at 153. So, okay, again, what do they see in a guy who most people pegged as more of a special teamer that you hope could maybe contribute if he has to as a depth player? Well, again, this is going to be a broken record here. He's a good athlete. Say it with me, right? Ran a 4.3, so has the again. For that kind of pick, I kind of understand it, right? Like, okay, if you're going to draft a guy late, get a guy who's a good athlete, maybe has potential. Although at pick 153, it's a bit early to be doing that, in my opinion. You can still get some good players. But again, the Jaguars just completely don't draft how I would draft. Like, they have a completely different philosophy. And again, there has been times where it's worked out. You also have, Colin Robinson, the running back who, again, say it with me, was a very good athlete. So you have the good athleticism type stuff. Doesn't have the production. So again, that's why he was projected to go undrafted by a pretty good margin. He was 355th ranked on the consensus big board. He gets drafted at 167, so not even with a late pick here. Could be a special teamer as well, which, like, that there is value there. So, definitely like that. You then have Cam Little, who is a kicker. I did not do a deep dive on the kickers, I'll be honest. Apologies to all the people who only tuned into this video wanting to hear my thoughts on the kickers. But, I have no issue drafting a kicker this late. I think that's kind of the one special teams position I don't mind drafting at this point. And maybe even, like, if there was a really good special teamer drafting in the 200s, I wouldn't hate that either outside of kicker. But, kicker here, sure, if you like him. Again, I haven't done the research on him, but if he's someone who they think can be a good player for them, fine. Miles Cole goes at 236. This is, again, it's a similar guy to what we've been talking about. He is someone who is a good athlete. He's a 6-year starter, which is interesting. Some guys are a 1-year wonder. He, again, still never really had the production down. You're drafting someone who you hope can get it down and you can develop him. He's a weird body type as well at 280, 6'6". So, again, it's the most athletic draft we'll talk about. Is it the best draft? I don't know. Usually at a lot of these positions, I tend to like to get guys who I've seen do it. But that being said, like, even though I'm trying to not be like cold on it too much, just because it's legitimately just a philosophy thing. And I think that if this is your general philosophy, you want to get athletes, they did a pretty good job with it. And even some other picks, I like the Jones and the Foster pick, even if they were quote-unquote reaches. I love the Brian Thomas Jr. pick. I think at wide receiver, go out and get a good athlete. And even positions like, like Prince and Robinson, it makes sense for me, even if they were a bit early to do that. So as a whole, it's a draft that is very different than how I would draft if I was Jacksonville, but is, could end up paying dividends, although I wouldn't bet on it, but I've been wrong before. So we'll see. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Jaguars' interesting draft. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.